books. How are you doing? This is my final video for March. Very excited to say I've totaled up all the number of books I've read so far this year in 2023, and it's made 52. So I'm absolutely slamming my goal of 100 books in the year. I'm not going to start moving the number up until I reach it because I don't want to be too ambitious, and I might actually like to get stuck into some really meaty big thick fat books which are going to take a little bit longer to read. But hurrah, huzzah, it's all good news so far. And in this video I'm going to be talking about another 6 books which I've read to finish off March. I'll also include the links to March Reads 1 and 2 in the descriptions, so if you've missed the previous videos where I've talked about the other books I've read this month, you can find them easily. And if you're new to the channel, do remember to like and subscribe and let me know what sort of things you like to read or any suggestions that you think I might enjoy. So first of all, we have Elizabeth Strout, Lucy by the Sea. This is a library book that I got a couple of weeks ago after I read My Name is Lucy Barton, which is the first one of the series by Elizabeth Strout. There's actually a whole series of books about the same characters, but what I really like about these is you don't actually have to have read them all or read them in the right order. So this is, I think, the last one that came out. The one before this, though, William was shortlisted for the Booker Prize last year, but this is a pandemic book, so it might not be for everybody. Some people are a bit sick of reading about the pandemic, then don't pick this one up. But in this story, Lucy is whisked away from New York by her first husband, William. He wants to save her life at the beginning of the pandemic, and she's not convinced that anything's going to happen with this virus that's spreading across from Asia. You know, she thinks it's going to not have a massive impact on her life in New York, but William insists that they go away and they stay on the coast in Maine. And like the first book, actually, My Name is Lucy Barton, we have quite a restricted location because of this. You know, they're stuck in one place during lockdown. They think they're only going there for 2 weeks and they end up stuck there for months. But what I really like about these books is, you know, you really get to know the family in the story. We learn all about Lucy and her husband and their children, and there's a really colloquial and friendly tone in the narration, which is first person from Lucy. We really root for her throughout it, and it's so wonderfully observed in terms of the relationships. And it's a quick read, it's a light read, but it does deal with some quite serious topics, obviously because of the connections with the pandemic, and it's all about how the family survive and adapt to this sort of new way of living that COVID brings along to them. But it's about those relationships, about what matters when everything else is taken away, and revisiting past loves. So yeah, I enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed the first one. I'd definitely pick up any of the other ones in the series, in the Lucy Barton series, if I saw them. And there's also mentions of Olive Kitteridge in this as well, which is another character from Elizabeth Strout's books. So there's a sort of a whole world that's coming together, which is quite enjoyable to read. Secondly, a few weeks ago, or a few months ago now, I read Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, which was also shortlisted for the Booker last year. And I really, really loved just the small, compact, perfect, exquisite little novella. So after reading that, I had to read Foster. Foster's from 2010, so it's been a little bit around a little bit longer now. Again, it's just a novella, it's just a small book. But I'd heard so many good things about this, and everybody sort of said this is Claire Keegan's finest work to me. So I bought a copy of this. It's basically all about a young girl who goes to stay with, I think it's extended family in rural Ireland, and it's just beautiful, the relationship she develops with the mother and father who live in this farm, and the love that they give her that she's never really experienced before is just incredibly touching. But it's so beautifully observed on a sentence level. It's just exquisite. It feels like Claire Keegan, you know, is a poet. She's so concise with her language and paints such a beautiful picture. But there were a few moments where my heart really did melt. in the way that this couple take this girl in and treat her and make her part of the family. So if you've read any Claire Keegan before, you know, you will love this. But it's just a beautiful little book, and so tiny as well. Just, you know, worth picking up if you see it. And that's the second book I read at the end of March. The third book is a bit of an odd one. It's a recommendation I got from Jen Campbell, and those of you who don't follow Jen Campbell on YouTube, she's definitely worth following. I've found loads of really good books from her recommendations, and this is an odd one, and it fits in with the dystopian theme of some of the other books that I've been reading recently, and it's The Beauty by Aliya Whiteley. And again, it's a novella, it's a short story, and in the story it's kind of in a future you know, future world where women have been slowly dying out. They've caught a virus and they've been dying, and what happens is mushrooms start erupting from their bodies, and as the women die out and their bodies are buried, these mushrooms are kind of growing through the ground around their graves. And our central character is Nate, and he's kind of like the storyteller of the little community of men that are left, and he sort of spins up tales and talks about the before times, but he also talks about, you know, what's happening with these mushrooms. And then one day Nate gets lost in the wood, falls through the ground, and when he wakes up he is met by a kind of mushroom woman. I don't know any other way how to explain it than that. It's sort of a hybrid woman mushroom, and the woman mushroom and him start a relationship, and then he goes back to the group of men and takes more of these mushroom women with him. And it's all about how these two sort of I don't want to say races, the mushrooms and the people sort of come together, and they start to have their own sort of mushroom children. I think it's a really interesting story. It really makes you think about gender dynamics and the reversal of gender dynamics as well at certain times. I'd be really interested to know if anybody else has read this. It's sort of creepy and dark and poetic and odd, but I did enjoy it. And again, it's not a long read as well, but I'd love to know if anybody else has read this one. Next, we have a bit of a silly book, which I really enjoyed actually. It's a new release. It's 2023 Grady Hendrix, How to Sell a Haunted House. I love silly horror, and this is a silly horror. At the heart of it is actually a relationship between a brother and sister, Louise and Mark. They're estranged, and after their parents die unexpectedly, they meet together to go through the parents' possessions and put the house on the market. But Louise and Mark's mum collected dolls, and she made and collected puppets. And let's just say Pumpkin, one of the puppets, has other plans for what's going to happen to this family and what's going to happen with the house. So it is grim and scary at places, and in other parts it's laugh out loud funny. It reminds me of, I love 80s horror movies, and one of the reasons I love them is because they're silly, you know, that they're so bad that they're good. And this isn't bad at all. It's been constructed in that way. But if you like horror and you like comedy horror and over the top silliness, you know, think of a golem made of dolls. You know, I don't want to give too much away, but this is a silly, funny book, and I really enjoyed reading it, and I would recommend it. Again, it's not going to be for everybody. The relationship between the brother and sister is really the heart of it, as I say, and they start off completely at odds, and it's about how their relationship evolves through the time while they're grieving for the parents. But yeah, if you like silly horror, pick this one up. It's great. I also wanted to talk about The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I'm cheating slightly because I talked about this in my first dystopian book recommendations video, so apologies if you've watched that one. But The Road is written in 2006. It's your quintessential dystopian novel. It's a man and a boy unnamed who are travelling through a destructed environment on their way to the coast, trying to escape the cold weather. They're basically just trying to survive in what is really hopeless circumstances, and they're continually on the brink of extinction. There's themes of cannibalism here. There are other people, and but not very many, and most of them are bad. The bad people, as they're described, but they're looking for good people, and on a day-to-day level, looking for food and shelter. And I really enjoyed this. I think it's definitely worth the hype that it has. It's a real, as I say, it is what it says on the tin. If you like Walking Dead, or you like any of the other sort of, you know, classic dystopian novels with people trying to make do in a scavenged landscape that's already been looted to nothing, you'll enjoy this book. So there's that one. So that's the 5 books, but there's one more as well which I listened to, which was an audio book, and it's one of the books that has been shortlisted for the Women's Award, the Women's Fiction Award for 2023, and that's Cecile Pinn's Wandering Souls. I wish I'd kind of read the book, because I think it's worth having the paper copy, because I wanted to go to and fro with it. But at the centre of it, it's the story of Anne, who's 6, Min and 13, and Fan, who's 10, who try to travel to Vietnam at the end of the 70s. It's after the Vietnam War. The whole country is in economic turmoil. It's not a safe place to be. So the family, so the sister and 2 brothers, along with their parents and 4 siblings, make a plan to travel to Hong Kong to a new life and more opportunities. But unfortunately, and I'm not giving away any spoilers, it says all this on the back of the book, on the way one of the boats sinks. So the only people who make it to Thailand, as it is, that they get to, is Anne, Min and Tan. And eventually they're resettled in the UK, in London, in the 1980s. And so there are elements about crossing cultures, about racism, about trying to settle in a completely new world, and a lot about grief, the ongoing grief that this family feel at the centre of their everyday lives at losing their parents and their 4 siblings. And what's interesting as well is I couldn't work out, and I'd have to do some more reading, whether it's completely fictionalized or whether it's based on true events. It's certainly set up to indicate that it's based around true events. And at the end of the book, the narrator sort of talks about fictionalizing these true events and changing names, but the narrator does have a different name from the author, so that's what left me unsure as to whether it's completely fictionalized. But what she does, which is really clever, is she intersperses newspaper reports, tales about other things that were happening to refugees and immigrants at that time, and it makes it feel really new. There's a one bit where they talk about a report about Margaret Thatcher and how she sort of said that she wanted to support the Vietnamese immigrants, but then actually she didn't. It's a spoiler, but it's really about that relationship. It's quite a saga actually, because it starts off in the 1970s and goes all the way up to 2022, as we follow this family as they you know, try to engage with their new lives as immigrants in the UK. But it's really sad. It's really touching. One of the narrators is actually the ghost of one of the siblings that didn't make the journey, but it's beautiful as well. And as I say, I kind of wish that I had a copy of the book, you know, so that I could go to and fro. The audiobook, I kind of lost a bit of the context of it, listening to it over the space of a couple of weeks, but I would definitely recommend it. It's been a really enjoyable read. So in total, I think I've read 22 books in March, which is a record. It's more books than I've read in any other month so far this year. And as I say, it adds up, I think, to 52 when I did the maths. So I'm definitely on my way to reading 100 books. But yeah, it's been incredibly enjoyable, particularly those last selection that I'm talking about in this video have just been, there's been some real crackers, some really enjoyable reads. And I hope that you decide to follow me and subscribe for the rest of the journey as we go through the rest of the year. And if there are particular genres that you'd like me to talk about, recommendations, do let me know in the comments. But thank you very much again, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.